Borderlands 4's biggest problem isn't the game, it's Randy Pitchford. Oh my god, what has he done now? So it looks like Gearbox's CEO is at it yet again in yet another PR disaster that somehow makes Claptrap look sane, proving once again to be a very outspoken CEO amidst backlash against Borderlands 4, which he has responded to with some, let's say, interesting takes. Saying things like it's a premium game made for premium gamers, to make your own engine, and even to refund the game if you're not happy with it. In some weird way, I kind of respect how bold and blunt he is, but at the same time, I've never seen a crash out like this in the gaming industry in, well, ever. But this isn't some sweet justice from the retail worker against that very obnoxious customer. This is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company basically swiping away very legitimate concerns, where instead of saying, hey, we hear you, we're working on it, instead points the finger and says, you're the problem. But why is he fighting this uphill battle? And why is he digging himself further into this very deep hole? And could something like this actually kill off a game like Borderlands 4? If you're not in the know, Borderlands 4 recently released, and it's actually a pretty swell time, all things considered. I mean, it's made some pretty bold design choices, it has a challenging loot grind for once, and the story is much more serious in tone. By all accounts, it's a step above its predecessor, Borderlands 3, and it shows through the metrics, having a peak concurrent player base of 300,000 players on Steam. It's a very interesting turn of events considering how the game didn't exactly make the strongest of impressions at first. And not to mention the entire game was muddied by the whole if you're a true fan you'll make it happen fiasco, where fans were rightfully so concerned about whether or not the game would release at $80, in which Randy responded with basically, well, that sounds like a you problem. And whilst the game eventually released at $70, what we'll soon find out is that, well, lessons weren't really learnt that day, and history has ended up repeating itself. Because despite everything being stacked against it, Borderlands 4 actually made a splash. And more than that, people were actually having an enjoyable time with the game. But that honeymoon phase quickly subsided, and the cracks started to show for Borderlands 4, which is sort of reflected within the Steam review score, which is currently sitting at mixed. And everybody had the same issue: optimization. We're talking about low frame rates, crashes, bugs and glitches, and more. And that's just on the PC side of things. On consoles, it's even worse. We're talking about textures not even loading, the game looking even worse than Borderlands 3 when it came out more than 5 years ago. And we're talking about things like animations not even properly playing. And that's sort of been the main critique by fans online. And so Randy took to socials hoping to quell the outrage, but instead of pouring water on the fire to extinguish it, he just poured a bunch of gasoline. Every PC gamer must accept the reality of the relationship between their hardware and what the software they're running is doing. This is basically the equivalent of saying get good when it comes to your PC rigs. And it doesn't stop there. Randy then went on this weird tangent online with some very spicy takes thrown in there. With Borderlands 4, every PC gamer has a lot of tools to balance their preferences between FPS, resolution, and rendering features. If you aren't happy with the balance between these things you are experiencing, please tune your preferences using the tools available to you.
Meanwhile,
when a 5080 struggles to hit 50 FPS at 1440p in a game with this level of graphics detail, it's called an abusive relationship. Fighting for my life to get 50 to 70 FPS at 1440p in DLSS balance. No frame gen, hate the latency. Now a game keeps crashing 7 times in less than 2 hours. Optimization is outrageous. And this player got the game for free, by the way, and even they're sick of it. It is a mistake to believe or expect that PCs between minimum specification and recommended specification can achieve all of extremely high frame rate, maximum ultra features, and extremely high resolution. This is missing the forest for the trees, because the issue isn't that the game is failing to meet expectations, it's the fact that the game is failing to meet the bare minimum. It's not a matter of low tier specs not being able to keep pace, it's a problem across the board, from basic setups to NASA level PCs. Everyone is experiencing issues. And it's frustrating because you could probably name a ton of games that are able to run better than Borderlands 4. Heck, you could probably look back to older games that have larger servers and greater graphical fidelity that are able to just knock Borderlands out of the water. These games somehow manage to be enjoyable to play even for people with low-end PCs because A, they're not an eyesore to look at, and B, frames don't go by every time you blink because they are properly optimized. And yes, you can use the whole Unreal Engine 5 argument, but again, that speaks more to the game itself rather than the hardware. There are a ton of games made in Unreal Engine 5 that are able to make it work, regardless regardless of the engine's issues. I don't know what exactly the problem is here. I mean, Borderlands 4 isn't exactly the most graphically impressive game out there. This guy poses an interesting theory about nanites eating out most of the processing power, but at this point, your guess is as good as mine. But regardless of all that, no matter which way you swing at it, the issue lies with the game, not with people's PCs. And something clearly needs to change here, but that's not exactly how they're seeing it. If that last post makes you have a negative reaction, I bet you have emotions and expectations that you feel aren't sufficiently attended to. I'm sorry. Oh my god, just take this man's phone away. If this guy doesn't have a PR team, get one. If he does, fire them. Honestly, it's high time somebody started moderating this guy's social media account before he starts really going off the rails. And the worst part is that some people will probably agree with this rhetoric. Well, you're being pretty harsh, bugs and glitches happen in games all the time. And to that I say, well, Borderlands 4 isn't your average video game experience. Borderlands 4 is a AAA title, charging $70 up front and up to $130 for the Super Deluxe Edition, which is mostly being sold on the promise of DLCs that haven't even been released yet. Combine that with a PC that will probably cost $1,000, or a console that charges between $400 to $500, and that's a lot of money to invest into a single experience. So forget the developer expectations, ours is to be able to have a basic functioning product when we insert the disc or even just load up the game. I mean, there's some other points here, right? Like change your own systems or use DLSS, which I know is a very contentious topic online because not everybody is super satisfied with the results, but even so, the bottom line is just sort it out yourselves. Apparently this guy has helped in customer service, which I cannot even imagine what that's like. I don't know what his deal is. He's either posting these really long explanations online, or he's just copying and pasting the same response over and over again. Would you like help tuning with your personal specification? Would you like help tuning with your personal specification? Would you like help tuning with your personal specification? No, I would not. Quite frankly, I think you've said enough. God, it's like listening to an AI bot. And it's a real shame as well because I do enjoy the Borderlands series. Now granted, Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderland are kind of outliers in this case because the tone was obnoxious, the story wasn't really anything to write home about and it was more annoying than anything. The humor was just, you know, catered towards Gen Z and TikTokers, and more than anything, the challenge just wasn't there. But I still look at games like Borderlands 2 with a lot of love. And we're at the point now where the franchise needs a jumpstart, what with after the movie flopping in the box office. Borderlands 4 is more than just a chance to right the ship, if you will, but to do so away from a giant iceberg where, if it did hit, it would just spell either the end of the franchise or a dramatic shift towards a live service MMO or something like that. And I mean, the game certainly didn't start off strong after crashing in the middle of Conan O'Brien's show. Despite everything being stacked against the game ahead of its release, Borderlands 4 was able to secure a sizable player base, but man, Randy is not doing it any favors. It doesn't help when you go online to say that less than 1% of customer service reports are valid complaints, because people don't really use customer services. They go on Twitter, they go on Discord, they go on Reddit to voice their frustrations, they leave bad review scores on Steam, or they post videos like this one. And I mean, what is this trying to achieve other than saying that your concerns are not legitimate? Boy, it's legitimate to me. I paid close to triple figures for this game and I want it to work. It doesn't help when you tell people to code your own engine and show us how it's done, please. And it especially doesn't help when you say that it's a premium game made for premium gamers, because in a business where you're trying to sell, you know, as many copies as possible, it often helps not to act like a rich snob working at Rolex. But fine, I won't spend $130 on the super duper ultra premium deluxe edition. I'm gonna spend $20 to play Silksong instead. And it doesn't help when you say that you can't add an FOV slider to consoles because you had a dream about fairness. Wait, what? What does help is fixing the game, because actions like those speak louder than whatever this is. I was going to make a review on Borderlands 4 before all of this blew up on my feed, but there's a lot of good changes that they made with Borderlands 4 beyond all the optimization issues, like switching to a single large open world instead of having these smaller sectioned off areas, which is a very good change and I'm surprised hasn't been done sooner, to be honest. The grind actually feels worthwhile because legendaries aren't just handed over to you on a silver platter, so it actually feels somewhat satisfying to actually earn them this time around. And whilst the story isn't exactly anything to write home about, it is leagues better than Borderlands 3. The story is a lot more grounded, the tone is much more serious, characters are actually bearable to be around, and the humor is a lot less memey and silly. And relatively speaking, there really isn't a game like Borderlands out there. Sure, there are some games within the looter shooter genre like Warframe and Destiny and stuff like that, but nothing that is able to quite land the charm and aesthetic that Borderlands has always, upheld all these years. And I know the cel-shaded Mad Max look is always going to be, hit or miss for people, but I for one will always appreciate a game that's going to be a departure from the usual modern military shooter that's always dark and gritty. But events like these do shape people's perception of a game, and that can be to the detriment of a title like Borderlands 4, because aside from the die-hard fans that will buy a Borderlands game no matter what, the next people you then have to convince in that latter are the casual gamers, who will always be on the fence against multiple games in a scene that has more options than ever. But for people who are at all concerned about performance in their games, Randy has made the decision for them, quite frankly, and his stance on the matter is very clear. Here's the door, and don't bother leaving a tip on your way out. And if you've been following Borderlands for a while, you know that this really isn't anything new. Randy Pitchford has had a, let's call it a colorful history. There's always something going on, there's always some major controversy or drama with every major release that Gearbox has had over the years. He can't help himself, and 2025 appears to be no different. Do I think the guy deserves to receive death threats over it? No, of course not. But then again, he just keeps doubling down and just spurring people on, so he hasn't exactly been helping this situation. And honestly, like I said, this entire thing could have been avoided if all he just said was, you know what? We hear you, we're sorry, we're going to try everything we can to resolve this, stay tuned. But honestly, the future of the game is up in the air at the moment, because if it isn't properly optimized soon, then I just see nothing but troubles ahead for the game. Because even with all the post-launch DLC detailed in the roadmap, what's the point if it's all going to be on par in performance to what we've experienced so far? I don't know, at this point only time will tell, but I gotta dash off and get help tuning the game to my own personal specifications, so I'll catch you next time.